do something else.
Okay, sure. Let's do that.
Because I've never done it before. Okay, not for you who love me. Okay, but we gotta hurry up. Aaron's here. Wait, Aaron's here.
Whoa, this is like I literally just wanted to come sing with you. Like, he's actually like,
Aaron, please. That's so high.
Does anyone have a tissue? That's okay. I'm just gonna. Oh yeah. Hold on. I want like a selfie. What does it say? My voice is. I really don't.
We're all going to stand up to sing all together. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen.
Thanks, everyone. If you could have a seat.
Just until Abuna is ready for his next talk, can I just open up, open feedback? We've been doing Rise for many years. Do you have any feedback? I know you will send feedback and all, but is there something on your heart right now to say about Rise that can make Rise the spiritual day that is good for you and can fill you and can help you as a servant? Any thoughts? Jessica, can it be longer? Can it be like a retreat, like over a weekend? Okay. Let's take some notes. You get to do a formal feedback. I do prefer the face-to-face, like in-person type of feedback. We're all servants together here, and we always look for how to improve, or at least how to make sure that this day has a function. The function isn't really to come and just spend the day here and see one another, and that's good fellowship, but really it is about being spiritually revived as servants. So go ahead if you have other thoughts. Yes, Karen. So it's a minute or two of silence and reflection after each talk. Good. Yes, Bishoy? Is that Bishoy? Yes, Bishoy? Case studies. So putting it more into a real servants type of scenario, or something you can relate to and apply practically. That's okay. Anything else? Yes. If we can have discussions, so what I'm hearing you say is having discussions that are age-related or specific to the age of children or youth we serve, or the area of service we're in. So I'm hearing here a little bit more of like service development, developing within the service. Okay. That's part of RISE, by the way. If you know the acronym of RISE, you can go to RISE on the website, and you can see what we hope this this group or community or event stands for, and that's one of them. So that's good. Okay. Yes. One-on-one time with the spiritual father or the guest speaker or the fathers who are here. So that might be something we can do on a retreat because we have more time. Absolutely, I think that would be amazing. We try to do like a one-on-one with Abuna when he comes the night before, but again, it's not part of the day. But that's a very good point. So Shadi is taking all these notes. Yes? So again, what I'm hearing is very similar to what you're saying in terms of process. So how is it that we prepare lessons? So resources, and how do we go about, so more of, this is what, like development, like, what's the word for it? It's like maybe skill development, learning. So some of the practical stuff in service and how to do that, okay? Any couple of more thoughts? Yes. Workshops, okay, so involving some sort of workshops to sit in and discuss and get into the details of things, and yes? So to see what other churches are doing and to get ideas from other services. We've done that before. We've had booths where people present on different things, and today Shadi presented on something, and but we could do it in a more explicit way. One final thought. I'm sure you'll have time to give feedback, and please do give feedback. But anything else that you want to share before? Any feedback? We're all good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our final talk. Our final session is on the humble servant. In this session, Abuna Antony will be leading us to reflect on John 13, verses 14 and 15, where Jesus humbly washed his disciples' feet, teaching us that true servanthood is rooted in humility and selflessness. How can humility deepen our relationship with Christ and enhance our service to others? Let's again welcome Father Antony once again. Thank you.
Crickets. All right, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, one God, amen. This talk is probably going to be the least humble, even though it's one about humility. This is partially a vent, bad words. So it's supposed to be the humility of the servant and washing, what it's like to have the spirit of washing one another's feet. But I'm going to take some jabs, and I'm guilty of the very things that I'm going to say. Because I think that we've actually made even washing feet flashy. So that even the washing feet doesn't even seem humble anymore. It's just like, yeah, I get to wash feet because I have this badge. Like we've managed to even make it weird. So I might take some shots here only because I think that the disease of arrogance is all of us, myself included. And it hits so hard, and I think it's one of the biggest parts of the disease in the service is these different kinds of lacks of humility. So just as a recap, this was said in the meeting last night when everyone was there, is humility is, like if we want to get more definitional, it's taking something like basically small t thing and holding it against capital T thing. That's all it is. It's actually a very objective thing. It's not about how you feel about yourself. There's different things that could be a sign of your lack of humility. So what I mean, like in a second, is to say, if there's a proper way of being, right? Humility is to hold up the thing that was designed against what it was designed to be, and saying, do they match? So it's a very objective thing. So if I am the image and likeness of God, I am small I image, and he's capital I image. So I just need to look at myself relative to him and say, do they match? Where they don't, I am wrong. And where they do, I'm actually right. And there's no pride in that. There's like, you can even in humility know that you are correct. You would just know that you're not the source of correctness, right? It would be, I'm correct because I match capital T, truth, right? That's all it is. So the reason I'm saying that is that for humility of anything, whether it's humility of speech, eyes, service, is to say, what is the proper, what is the noun, what is the straight line about it say, and where am I relative to that? Whatever is not that is what needs to be fixed. When we lose humility, it's when we think that we are the source of capital T truth, of like, it's right because I said it, right? Or even right because that person said it. That isn't why it's right. And that's why even in humility, like with the social sense of the word that we're usually using, it's never even who am I compared to other people. Because other people are also just in the image and likeness of God. It's not right or wrong because Uncle the Saint is that. Like Uncle the Saint is that because Christ is that, not because he is that. So we have to be clear of that. And it'll become more clear what I mean by that in a second. But the framing verse that I actually want to use with this is, finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And if I can very presumptuously add, I would say don't just think on these things, talk about these things. Is that once we stray from these, this is like the best list to follow, this speech is probably not good. and the thoughts are probably not good. It's either going to be negative or outright wrong. Now, if we want to get into what does the humble servant look like, number one is discipleship. Okay, and again, I'm gonna rocket through some of these. Are you a disciple, or do you think you're the physician? Right? Do you think that with no training, you just know always what to do and what's the right thing to say and what the right thing to do? And then everybody sit at the table and be like, oh, I wouldn't have done it like that. And I'm like, right? Like, what makes you know? And we've all done that, right? Like, I'm very guilty of all the things that we're talking about. But of being like, did I ask? Right? Imagine if like there's like it's akin to being like, yeah, like you're diagnosing because you can use ChatGPT. I mean, that's even more helpful. At least there's ChatGPT. But before, even with Google, do you think that you could walk in and be like, no, obviously he doesn't have colon cancer? And it's like, obviously based on what? Did you take his labs? Right? Did you do any imaging? Like, do you even know how to read an image? And I'm like, why do you think there's those symptoms? How do you know it wasn't a differential? Why do you think you know? Right? And again, I'm speaking to myself too. I'm not trying to be aggressive outwardly. I'm speaking to me as well. Do you get advice about your giving advice? Right? Like that's something that should be done. Right? Of being like, what does it look like? These people ask me. I know that when I first started saying, like, I actually would panic because I understood that I knew nothing. I was just lucky that I really knew that. Right? And be like, oh no, this person asked me this. And I was like, I was in the spot, so I said this, and blah, blah, blah. And so I started getting advice, thinking, no, here's how you could deal with that. When you're in the spot, here's a way to look at it. And the goal, just to be clear, in discipleship, hopefully, is not to control you. Like, if so, then that relationship needs to be visited. So, like, for those who are anxious about that, the goal is not to be, we're not trying to say that you have no ability, like, to serve. You were hired because you can serve. Right? Like all of us. So there's not an assumption of like, oh, no, you shouldn't be. It's saying, what is the right scope? I sometimes, for the sake of understanding, compare, because a priest is just a different kind of servant, right? We're still servants. There's not ayem kuntakhedem, like the days when I'm still a servant, right? There's just a specific one. I would say that the non-priestly service, maybe an analogy that could work is saying it's kind of like nursing. You have your own scope of practice, and it is your own. Like, you have an actual scope. And you actually have a lot of time with the patient, actually even more so than usually the physician will. And you might actually even know the patient often better than the physician might even know. It's even possible, right? And so it's like work within your scope because it's a real scope and it's a beautiful scope. I'm not going to lie, God forgive me, I know it's being recorded. I never wanted to have the different scope. I liked the nursing scope. There's a whole beauty to it and there's a lot that you get to do when it's in there. So stay within that and get advice about it. Right? And that's saying inevitably you're going to learn stuff. You might be more in tune to the symptoms of the patient than the physician because you're seeing them. Right? You might even start to notice patterns of being like, oh, I've seen this before. Whenever this thing starts to happen, right, it usually means X, Y, and Z, right? So, but get advice about it. I remember, I overuse this example, but that's me, I'm just repetitious. But I remember in my home church that, like, when I had gone through my own phase internally, and then I took like an intro Phil course in first year, I came back like fiery to Abuna, and I'm like, we need to give a talk about atheism. And of course, I thought, like, who else other than myself? But then, like, I'm like all excited, and Abuna's like, no. And I was like, why not? Like, this is a serious issue, and I'm all bum hurt. And he was just like, I hear their confessions. This isn't really an issue right now. And you exposing them could be a problem, right? And so it's like, if this person was not thinking about it and then you've now said it, now they're going to have the thoughts and then we're going to start an issue. 3 years later, he actually was like, please go give the talk. Now it is the right time. Right? Without even bringing it. So I've never forgotten that lesson personally. I had an incident I was talking about in one place I was serving where I said something in confession where I named a sin and the person goes, oh, what's that? And I was like, oh, shoot. Like, I think I exposed them and it was going to do damage. And I was like, oh, this is not okay. I'm like, how do I play this down? What if he Googles it? I'm like, this is gonna be a problem. 5 minutes later, he goes, by the way, I know what it is. I was just joking. And I'm like, oh. But I was like, I got lucky that he was just joking. But I could have done damage. Like, and I remember that lesson of being like, yeah, when it was real in front of me that I might have actually exposed somebody. Don't think you know what you're doing. Don't think you have the right advice. You might have it. I'm just saying, don't assume you do, right? It's about your assumption. It's not about whether you're factually correct. It's about how you view yourself and your mind, right? Humility in speech, this is a really big one. And this is like, I find it so aggravating. How you teach, how you talk about people. Right? Do you base things on dogma and tradition or on yourself? How much of your speech is presented dogmatically without even challenging it if it even was dogmatic? Right? Your speech needs to be true, not lies. I know that seems very obvious, but I don't think it is. You need to be precise. Don't say things you don't know to be true. And if you don't know it to be true, but is valuable, then preface it as such, right? My understanding is such and such, right? What I received was such and such. But not, obviously, this is what it is, right? Don't speculate. And again, I'm using the word don't a lot, forgive me, and I mean it to me too. I'm not just saying that to be fake humble. I'm aware that I fall into this too, right? Don't speculate about things in a way that causes problems, right? So when you're talking about the service, if you're saying, I wonder if so-and-so did that because, insert whatever because is, you just inserted a whole thing of making people imagine, judge, gossip, slander, right? And it's like, and for what? And you won't even have an answer. You have no idea why he did or didn't do it, right? And now you've introduced something just from your speech. This is not humility of speech, because humility of speech means what is my speech compared to proper speech. That's what it means in context of speech, right? In proper speech, we don't lie, we don't slander, we don't gossip, we don't insert whatever the gospel has said, right? So I should always be comparing against that. Or saying, I bet so-and-so said that because. Don't offer speech about things that don't concern you, right? Then we get into lies and gossip, and these things have a real effect on the service and the served, right? These are the things that really rock churches, even though they seem so small. These are the small things that lead to, are you part of team so-and-so or team so-and-so? These are things being like, yeah, I'm more of the school of this person versus this person, where it's not even a real school. It's more like, oh, in these fights, I'm more likely to align with Germany, and I'm with Russia, and here I'm with whatever. Like, this is not what church is about. That is not what speech is for. And if that happens in our service, which it often does, we break it, right? And then you come back with the stories, right? Yeah, uncle did such and such to us. Why? Because he doesn't like our service, obviously. Right? And then you'll use the word obviously because apparently it's obvious, right? Of being like, no, and he's trying to shut it down. And I saw him. He sat with Abuna so-and-so, who I know for a fact doesn't like our service. And so now they're trying to stop it, and I bet you tons so-and-so probably told this story, and that's why we have to make sure that, like, and you start positioning and the stories increase. I'm like, it is not just non-humble. You break things. Right? People are going to make mistakes. Should that be our speech? That's why I started with the what sort of things are pure, lovely, true, honorable, all those things. Is that what we're talking about? Instead of being like, man, that was such a great lesson. The kids were really excited, right? It's just like, that was so long. And we go into something negative, right? And then being like, I don't know if we can trust them to serve. Like, I mean, I know they mean well, and I don't want to judge them, but like, no one relates to them, right? And then wherever that takes us, right? And then suddenly we're excluding people from service, and we're making people have opinions, and then we are assessing things that we shouldn't assess. This is all from how we talk, right? This isn't the right way to build. So when you reference other servants, what do you sound like, right? Are you the kind that's like, yeah, obviously uncle did that. I wouldn't expect otherwise, right? That's a statement. Do you chuckle a lot sarcastically? Right, where like someone's name come up and you're just like, yeah, no, go ahead, continue yours. We know, right? That's a statement, right? There's nothing humble about that, right? And you're causing a whole bunch of reactions. And there might be somebody who loved uncle and like, oh wait, do we not like uncle? Like, I mean, you can. I mean, we love everyone, right? And then the hypocrisy comes out. Do you say things like, you know, because we love our I statements, I usually agree with so-and-so. As if your agreement matters, right? Who cares if you usually agree with uncle? Is what uncle is saying true or not true? Is what Tan's saying true or not true? It's not whether you have evaluated it to be true. Who are you, right? It's not about you or me. It's what is the truth, and what are we saying compared to the truth? That's how we can teach. That's how we can grow. But if I make myself the standard, then I'm saying, I would like you all to be in the image and likeness of me, right? There is nothing holy about that. It's like saying, we said the framing thing was the disciples washing, Christ washing disciples' feet, right? And then us saying, I am now the model because I washed as Christ did. Now emulate me. And it's like, no, but you were always supposed to be emulating him, right? It's not an icon of you washing the feet, right? It's an icon of him washing the feet, and we're supposed to match that. I was giving a cheesy example, but I don't think I need to. I'm thinking of just some examples I've seen. A servant wrote an article that I remember about a certain bishop that he loved that had departed. And he wrote it to rejoice. I'm just giving examples of where we do this in the service, and even when it can look small. The person wrote it to rejoice in the life of that saintly bishop and to expose others to the bishop. That was his only motive, right? It was just, he was excited, right? So a youth read it, loved it, and then went to a priest who happened to know that bishop and was like, oh, did you get a chance to read like what that person wrote? Like, it was so beautiful. Like, I know you knew him. And they were going because they want more stories. And that servant's response was, I know who he thinks he is to write about that bishop. I know that bishop, right? And it's just like, why'd you kill it? Like, why can't everyone love the saintly bishop, right? Why did only you have access, right, to the saintly bishop? So like, we do these things. And sometimes it's just because we're excited to tell that we had a special relationship. Okay, cool. There might be a proper way to say that if it needs to be said, right? But it's not like that, right? Like, how are we speaking? Is everything you say sarcastic? Right? Because sarcasm, especially if it's sarcasm about a person or a service, is not righteous, right? And I'm very sarcastic if you haven't picked up on that yet. But I knew a servant who was so sarcastic that as a servant, when he served, let there be light, I would laugh when he dished it, but I never wanted to approach because I was so scared I'd get cut up. Where I'm like, ha. I'm like, not me. Like if I'm going to you, I want to feel secure. I don't need you to tell me like how dumb you think I am. Where I'm like, I'm already aware that I might be dumb, and I suspect it. But when you keep telling me it, I'm like, I'm not getting anything from you, right? In the way you talk about ideas. I'm going to use an example, it sucks to use here because you guys have many incredible iconographers. But when people would say things like, no, that's not an icon, I'm sorry, that's a painting. Right? And it's just said like this dogma, I'm like, oh, is it? Right? And it's like, yeah, that's a painting. We don't do that. And it's like, why? Because it didn't have gold leaf? Right? When did a painting turn into an icon? If Luke was the first iconographer, did Luke know he was writing an icon? Or was he painting a portrait? And when did it get the name? And why was it called that? And when did it get gold leaf? Right? And when did it get standardized? I'm not demeaning for any of it, but I believe there is such thing as beauty and iconography, etc. And I'm not the expert. You have them sitting in this congregation. But my point is that language, right? It's so divisive, right? It's saying, I'm on this team very strongly. Are you going to think like me, huh? Or are you one of them, right? And then that becomes literally our language. Right, of being like, there are people who think, right, and then we've categorized them, right? This is not humble language, and it is so divisive, right? Teach the beauty of something rather than talking about the negative. Instead of saying, here's these bad people do this, instead be like, isn't it so beautiful that, and insert the positive. That's why, we started that thing from St. Paul, thing being a very important verse. Humility in ambition. I'm just trying to be mindful of time. What are you serving for? Are you a ladder climber? Right? Where you either want to be in charge of a service or you want to get ordained, right? Like that exists. There are people who do that. Do you want to give talks to get notice? Do you outreach youth because you want to be loved and get votes for your plan or whatever it is that you want next? Because it causes problems, right? Look at what happened when James and John's mother went to Christ and said, just طلب واحد بس يا رب. Right? And then, like you can picture a tons like saying that, right? I mean, حاجة واحدة بس, حاجة بسيطة بس يا رب. That my 2 kids are on your left and right to co-reign with you. And it says that the disciples spent the whole time fighting, right? Being like, who do they think they are and why not me and blah, blah, blah. That Christ is like, why were you fighting on the way? Like, oh, nothing. Right? And then he responds saying the right way is humility, just serve, right? So if we're being ambitious, you ruin things, right? It not only ruins you, it ruins the service, right? That's not why we serve. We serve because these are our brothers and sisters in Christ. We are just his vessels, right? Humility in positioning. Like I said, icons is an example. Screens or rituals, right? Of being like, no, I can't believe that Abuna did that. That is not a thought. Have you not seen the 1902 or whatever book it is that Boromos had? That's not what they did. Right? Therefore, home of Hemshfhaik. Right? And then you start all this stirring, they're like, oh wow, like, yeah, like that guy's dumb. Right? And then suddenly you're having all these arguments like the Mishkida. Right? Even if you want to question it, no problem, question it. Right? Be like, hey, I was wondering how come it's like that. I had read this where it had this. Why is it different? And then actually listen to the answer, not wait for them to finish to tell them why they're now dumb. I mean, no, I did it, I asked them. They're just dumb. Right? But it being like, no, stop and actually listen. Maybe there is another answer. Maybe there is another reason. Maybe there is room for multiple ways to do it. And if so, then are you just arguing for it to be the way that you want? Because then the service is going to suffer because, again, of our lack of humility. And we've got to be careful. When people say things like, all the fathers said, I'm like, really? Like, did you actually take down everything that they said, and you actually did the work to find out that they are actually completely congruent on all of these things? Because that's extremely rare. It's highly unlikely. In the places where they were, that's mostly where we have dogma, right? And there's not a lot of dogmatic statements that we make, right? So when you say all the fathers said, or the opposite of being like, no one ever did that, right? And it's like, watch your language. Don't be so presumptuous in your language. So never assume, this is key, never assume anything, right? I've been learning this over and over from assuming, right? I've done it over and over. I've told people don't assume, and I still assume, right? It takes a long time to root this out. Don't assume anything. Don't assume you know. Don't assume you understand. Don't assume you have enough data. Don't assume you're qualified. One fact can change your whole interpretation of a scenario. Just one fact, right? I've seen people hold grudges for years and years and years and years, and then one fact being presented changes it all, being like, oh, I didn't know that, right? And then suddenly it's like, oh man, but like the last 7 years we didn't talk because you assumed, right? If somebody says something, don't assume their intention, even if it looks ridiculously obvious. Don't assume you've interpreted it right. If you've lived with someone for 40 years, still don't assume just because you know them that well that you're right. You don't know. One of the biggest problems within marriages and families actually is that we assume them through the lens of how we viewed them all this time. So we don't see the changes and we don't see different intentions, and we always view them in that certain way, and it breaks down, right? And so it's so interesting that sometimes it's the outsider that's able to bring peace rather than the insider, because the person who's not assuming was saying, no, I was just listening. This person said this. So you keep saying that they mean this, but they're clearly saying that they don't. And like, you just don't know. You just, when you get to know them, you'll know. And it's like, but no, you're assuming that, and you're basically saying, unless they admit that I'm right, that is their intention, this argument's not over. Right? And so like, there's no winning for the other person. So then if they even say, khalas, you're right, for the sake of the argument to end, the other person's like, aha, see? I knew you'd eventually say the truth. And it's like, no, I said it because it's the only way to end it. And it keeps going. I'm like, don't. Like, this is not how we talk to you. There's no humility in that. And so this is how we are. every one of your relationships, even within the service, whether it's the system of the service or your outreach in the service or individual relationships with the youth, imagine, or whatever age you serve, imagine if you're quote unquote being served for whatever that means, right? And you're trying to actually have a real conversation, you're opening up, and the person's just like, so I think what you're actually trying to say is this. And you're like, no, it isn't. And then, you might not understand it, but you do mean that. And you're like, okay, I'm open to maybe meaning that, but I don't think I mean that. I'm saying this. And like, you do mean that, right? And then repeat over and over. You're just gonna be like, okay, I'm not opening up to this person, right? Thank you so much for your time, right? And then move on and not do it. We have to be careful with this. We need to have humility in knowing that others are as gifted or more than you, right? I remember when I joined LA Diocese, and Embasarian moved me from the monastery to the city, like for service. I was okay, I come from Kitchener, we had an amazing youth service, like I'm the youth guy. So I had all these thoughts, like, oh, I have ideas, I know what could work, right? And I had all these things. And then I went within my first week in the diocese to their YSC, it's this competition they have. And I saw multiple hundreds of youth, if not over 1,000, it might actually have been over 1,000, that have memorized patristics, that are, like they had this whole competition that I never would have dreamed of, right? That I would have thought nobody would even have been interested in, right? Where they've memorized at hand, they've memorized patristics, they've done a book study and a Bible study, and they do all this stuff, and they're having a blast, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I didn't, like I thought I was the gift, right? And I'm like, no, I didn't know this happened. And I'm like, I was happy if we were gonna plan like a retreat. Like, and I'm like, there's like, I'm not all that, right? Is huge for us to learn. It's like King Saul and King David, right? King Saul and King David were both called, and they were called dramatically, and they were both nobodies. King Saul had a complex when King David appeared, right? When people started singing, Saul has killed his thousands, but David, right? Then it was just like, I don't like David. And then that whole drama of trying to kill him. This is service. The kingship was a service, right? And they were using their service to kill one was using it to kill another person, right? And everybody saw it. Everybody knew it. David had to go into hiding. It was such a public fight. So be careful. I can say this even though this person, I think they left, but there's someone who moved to our church from another province. And like, so the crew that I was close with suddenly started hanging out. Oh no, he's here. They started hanging out at his house all the time, right? And I didn't have a house yet. And so they're like, yo, we're chilling at this person's house, we're chilling at this person's house. And I'm like, oh, I hope you're having fun, right? With the whole like self-pity thing, right? And then they're like, why don't you come? I'm like, no, it's okay. Right? I'm like, oh, I'm just so glad you like him. You guys should go over there. Right? I'm like, why am I bothered? It was jealousy. That's all it was. Being like, I thought I was the loved one. And like, apparently not. Right? And it's just like, get over it. Right? And then even realizing that it wasn't even the case. Right? And the person can be Azim who was like the matigi. Right? And it's just like at the beginning, I'm like, no, it's okay. I want them to love you. Right? And it's like, no, I didn't. Right? Like it was the complete opposite. I actually didn't. I'm like, no. Hopefully they're like, yeah, we're over it. We want you. That's not service. That's not love. Not even just service. There's nothing right about that. Right? We've got to be careful about these things. Do you assess other servants' behaviors or advice? Because that's not our place. Right? It's not for us being like, that servant did this or that person said this. If you're the other servant that didn't give the advice, if you're saying like, oh, that's crazy, I can't believe that he or she said that. He said that, but probably he didn't understand X, Y, and Z, right? Whereas internally, like, wow, I can't believe someone said that. How does that help the service? How does that help the served? Look for truth in everything people say, or acknowledge that you don't know enough to arrive at the truth. So it's very simple. Right? So if somebody comes to me like, oh, because Abuna told me this, I'm like, I can't speak for what Abuna did. I'm sure Abuna was answering you with the knowledge that he has and with how he viewed the situation. Are you asking me to give an advice relative to Abuna, or are you asking my opinion? Because I'm not going to reevaluate Abuna's. If you're asking my own, then I have my own as my own. It's not my own versus Abuna so-and-so or servant so-and-so or whoever it is. I remember when I first got ordained, like I was judging so many priests of what I thought was lack of commitment, right? Like now I'm the guy like who doesn't answer his text. I'm like, I can't believe it. Like that person like left them on red. This person clearly needs to talk. Like this person blah blah blah. I'm like I am 100% that guy, right? But I didn't know. I didn't have knowledge, right? And I assumed the worst. I'm like, oh, they just don't care, or they don't realize how serious it is. Right now I'm like, they're probably drowning, right? Like, but I was like, no, I know. I'm like, I will take care of it. I will rise to the occasion, and then fall. Do you have the humility, do you think you're even qualified to do the service or give advice or give talks on certain things? I thought I was a Christology expert, and then I heard Buna Macarius or fellows speak, and I'm like, I don't know anything. And so I'm like, now I'm like, okay, wow, like the exposure of another person, I'm like, I am not qualified. I realize that I'm just into it, but that guy knows. And so like, it's a different, like to be able to see the talents of others and be happy, right? Being, okay, good, there's another person covering it. I'm going on lightning, sorry, forgive me. We need to have the humility to know that our way is not the only way, and that we don't always need to get our way. Right? So it seems to me that many of us complain about the injustice of power imbalance, that certain uncles, tantes, abunas, servants, whoever, all get their way. But it also sometimes seems to me like the anger about the alleged situation arises only when you don't like the decision or how it's done. You weren't angry until it contradicted you, right? I'm not saying there isn't a problem. I'm simply saying your perspective on it, right? Is that you weren't mad until it contradicted you of saying, but now that I want my way, I'm critical of who it is that's saying or doing it. Do you always argue for your interpretation or your way? Do you stop and think about whether or not the conduct that you're doing is Christian or not? I mean that literally. Is it Christian? Do you care more about the fruit of the service or whether it was done how you like? Like imagine if when the Lord told the disciples, he said, okay, make them sit down 50s in a company, sit down in groups of 50. Imagine the apostles started yelling, having a yelling match of whether it's more efficient to put them in a single file of 50 or 2 rows of 25, or sit in a circle because then it's easier to walk around them, right? Or to give the parents to give to the kids, right? But having real fights about that, right? It's like, are we concerned that everybody eats, or that they didn't sit the way that you thought was best, right? What is it that you're fighting for, right? It's for us to ask ourselves that. Are you constantly threatening to quit? If so, what does that mean? Right? What does that mean about what you think of the service and about what you're doing? I won't dwell on it too long. Humility and time. Time isn't yours, right? All that we have is everyone's. So if you think the truth about time, for humility and time, is that it's all for you, you're mistaken. I'm not saying that you don't get time, but I'm saying, but if you view it as, nope, this is all mine, no, it isn't, right? It wasn't created for you and you alone. It was created for the whole people of God. Do you view yourself as exceptional? Do you think the rules shouldn't apply to you? So you get to decide when the rules match and don't. So you'll get so mad when like these people didn't follow the system, and then you don't, and be like, I had to make a decision that was more pastoral. I went with the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law because I saw this need. But you were very worked up about the letter of the law when it was somebody else, right? Like these are the things that we need to challenge ourselves on. Because if you are doing your own thing, you create division, you cause comparisons, right? Because then the youth are like, but that person doesn't do like that. That person's nice, right? And then you get to be the good guy and let the other person look awful, right? Petty example, let's say you guys put a rule in the service. You can only go on this trip if you have such and such attendance. And then one servant says, but this poor kid, this is his chance to know God. And he didn't attend, and this is going to be his way to God, right? Great thought, right? So then you decide, yes, they can go. You allow the kid. But there were 4 kids just like him who didn't ask because they were honoring the rules, right? So they didn't even think I should ask. Because like, no, I know that I shouldn't because I didn't meet this criterion. And now they're scandalized by your behavior because like, oh, it's Kosa, right? And it's because you thought you could loose and bind. And I'm not saying that the answer is never to let them go. That's not the point of the story. But it was saying you assumed and you applied and you took a decision and somebody was hurt by that. 4, in this case, were hurt by that, right? Just because you didn't have the humility to say, I'm not really sure. And there's nothing wrong with going to the person who's responsible and saying, I really feel strongly that I wish this kid could go. That's a great thought. Like, that's a very nice thought, right? I'm just worried that this is going to be a thing. How do we deal with this? Getting the discipleship, right? Of saying, what is a better way? What's a strategy? So that there can be some answer that gives peace. Finally, there's a truth that he commanded us to serve, right? So if you have any other notion than this is to say, God says, but, right? If there's ever a place where God has spoken and it's followed by a however, we have a problem, right? If you're saying, I know the Lord says, but I tell you, something's wrong, right? And yet it's happening all the time, right? I mean, like, I know the gospel says turn the other cheek, but in this case you shouldn't, right? Of being like, well, based on what are you saying it shouldn't, right? It's saying, Christ said this, but... And it's like, no, we can fall short of what Christ said. But what do you mean? What do you mean by the however, right? When we say it. So finally, we're supposed to be washing each other's feet. Put ourselves at the lower position, not the higher, right? Christ says that. He says, wash the feet. Stand at the back, be invited to the front. And when you're at the front, don't even believe that you've earned it or that you'll stay there, because the same people who put you in the front might send you to the back, right? Don't even take joy in that. Honor and prestige mean nothing from men, right? That has no meaning, right? And it comes and goes like nothing. Righteousness comes from the right one, the righteous one, which is Christ our King. And we don't look for a reward, we look for right being in our unity. Humility is to seek the truth and not to believe that you are the truth. May the Lord, who is the truth, grant us grace in our service and in our pursuit, that we might have the humility to serve him in truth and spirit. To him be glory, now and always, the age of all ages. Amen.
Thank you, Abuna, for your reflections. I think we have some time for a Q&A, so we'll head over to the Slido and I'll get some of the questions. And if there's anybody that has questions that they would like to ask of Abuna, we can do that. So just give me one moment.
So, Abuna, if you tend to talk a lot, what do you do if you're almost afraid to talk with your youth, lest you say something wrong, even if you pray prior?
So if you don't know, don't speak, right? Like have certain guidelines, right? Of being like ask yourself before speaking, why am I speaking? Was I asked to speak? If I was, then at least I have a good, humble why. I'm answering because I was asked. Now, if I'm going to answer, do I actually even know? And if I don't know, then just say I don't know. There's no need even necessarily in most cases to speculate, right? Or if you know that someone else has the answer, then just offer it. But instead be like, why am I speaking? Is it to show off? Is it because I want to show that I know? Is it because I just want to make sure that they heard my opinion? Is it because I don't have peace unless I speak? And then those kind of things, like we said in like talk number 1, those are the kind of things to then go into for guidance, right? Because it's not the end of the world if you have wrongs in you, right? Or just being like, oh, I discovered that, like we're talking in talk 1, that I love to talk. So all I need to learn is, how do I talk rightly? That's all. It's not to say you will now therefore never talk again, right? And it's not to say you will never offer an opinion. It's just saying, how do we modulate it? How do we figure out how to do it in a healthy way with whatever vice that you've got? Because you won't be afraid of saying something if you know it's true and that it's not true because of you, right? That's not going to be scary. And if they've asked for opinion, then be like, okay, this is my opinion because you asked, right? If they're asking for advice, it's like, am I qualified to give this advice, right? I'm not married. It's not a huge problem for married couples, in most cases for me. But there are some things where I'm like, no, I really don't think I get it. I think you should talk to somebody here who does, right? And there's no shame in that.
Just want to make a couple of announcements. Shadi spoke about the different services that all the different churches offer in terms of going downtown and the services they do to the people who are in need of these type of services such as soup kitchen or going to the homeless, the sandwich run, I really hope that and we'll send you some information on that so you can get involved. And even these are good like venues to invite friends who may have disconnected in the past from the church, because it's a lot easier to do with someone and go and do acts of services than sometimes for people to come into the church and gather and listen to a sermon and all that. So use that as an outreach for yourselves and others as well. The other thing is, and you heard me speak about this before, we have a program, we have a school, we have a theological school called St. Paul Theological Seminary. And I want to be honest with you, I love the school very much, and Abuna Makari, along with a team with him, and Abuna Benyamin. You know Abuna Benyamin al-Maharai, he has come to really give a nice boost. Sayyidina is very caring about it. Abuna Angelos, most of the fathers, all the fathers, and myself really want to emphasize that we'd love to see people like yourselves, servants, take on courses in the seminary or at the seminary level. So the seminary has been doing well in terms of speakers and teachers or lecturers and topics. Just to tell you, for example, right in February and March was Dr. Gergis Bushra, who gave his course, Introduction to the New Testament Greek Language. Before him was George Basilius, who gave a course on apologetics for adolescents and adolescent ministry. We have Introduction to the Old Testament that was given by Father Daniel Hazer Seuss. Upcoming, we have the St. Basil Liturgy, will be taught by Father Victor Shahat. And there is Christology by Father Benjamin, Abuna Benyamin al-Maharai that I mentioned to you, and another course coming up in May by Father Ibrahim Aizer, Comparative Theology 3, New Heresies 2, and all that. It is so important as servants that we continue to learn, especially learn about our faith and our dogma and our history and all that. Currently, we have a number of people who have registered, but I'd really like to raise your interest. Go to www.stpaul.ts, so St. Paul Theological Seminary, that's the TNS.org, and you can look into all the programs that are offered there, and I hope that you take the decision to actually pick up a course, try it, see it. Once you try a course, you enjoy it, you like it, you learn, you read, it's going to help you in your ministry and in your service, and it's also going to help you in your own knowledge. Abuna was talking about learning and knowing and how we handle that, obviously, with humility and all that, but it is an important thing. So that's one thing. The other thing that I wanted to mention to you is a program for adolescent ministry called the Youth Ministry Certification Program, YMCP. And this program runs in cohorts, and it takes a cohort in September and ends in June of every year. This is like Prepare to Serve, but specifically for adolescent ministry. Adolescence is an age that spans from 9 years to 22, 23. So you can imagine like late grade 5 and 6, junior high, high school, uni, and early grads. The courses that are offered, they're offered in cohorts. So they're offered, you take a course, you finish it, you take a break for a week, then you take the next one, and so on. Here are the lists of courses: Mission to Youth Culture, Christian Leadership and Management, Youth Ministry Design and Programming, Counseling Adolescents, Apologetics for Adolescent Ministry, Crisis Management for Adolescents, and Purpose-Driven Youth Ministry. These are very helpful courses that prepare a person for youth ministry. They're offered in person, and for people who are outside of the Greater Toronto area, we offer them online. So we actually have people who have registered and graduated from Alberta, like in Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, other places. So you could actually do it remotely if you're not in this area, and it's offered asynchronously as well. Okay? If you're interested in knowing more about YMCP, you can go to ymcp.ca, or you can email myself directly, and I can give you more information, connect you with the coordinator of the course. Okay, so we have...
Thank you so much. Okay, so we'll go back to the Q&A. How to serve youth who don't seem interested in their class or don't necessarily want to be there and end up distracting others and upsetting servants.
I was told to swallow the mic. I think outreach is a big deal, because outreach is how you're going to get to know them and what's actually going on, and why they are doing, thinking, feeling, behaving the way that they are. If we're treating Sunday school, for example, as just one more place where they have to listen to more stuff, I'm not surprised that they struggle, right? Where it's okay, you're going to go to school this many days a week and then go to church and do it some more. So like, is there a life to it? Is there all of that? Finding that out. I also think we need to get a little bit more creative as servants than what we're doing right now, where I'm just asking, I'm not saying this is the solution, I'm just asking if the way we're doing it is effective anymore. Maybe it's not the right style for this generation. Maybe we need to revisit how we do our Christian education. Maybe it needs to be different than Sunday school. Maybe it needs to be small groups. Maybe it needs to be groups of discipleship. Like, I don't know. I'm just simply saying is try and find out what is the root cause. That's why I think outreach matters. I would hope in servants' meetings that an actual service gets discussed, because then you can share your challenges with one another to the particularities of the class. Because what if it's like, oh, it's just one person is going through something and it's just a matter of tolerating the behavior because something's going on, right? Like, where it might not be a huge issue. In another place, it might be that it's more serious than that. So have the servants having discussions as well. But I would say just be careful not to humiliate. Be careful not to overly chastise. I'm not saying don't chastise. I'm saying, like, what is your response? Make sure whatever you do is done in love as we figure it out. But I don't think there's going to be a straight up answer. But I would really say get to know those people is the most important. Once you do, all keys will be given to you, like, with joy.
Okay, thank you, Abuna. Next question. How can I discern when God is calling me to serve in a particular capacity or in a specific service?
I think there would be multiple levels. When you need to question why you believe it's a calling versus just your own inclination. And if it's your own inclination, that doesn't even make it bad, right? Like it's not like that means therefore you shouldn't do it. What I'm saying is, I think we've got to be very careful when we say things like, God has put it on my heart. Like, I'm a little bit weary of that line, even though it's often true. But I'm just saying it's hard to tell what that means and if it was really, really God. And that's where discipleship again comes in, of like with guidance as an outer view. That's one aspect of it. If it's because that's where you're gifted, of course that's more natural where you want to go. Right? So if it's because you just naturally are into that, right? Like, I'm not naturally good with seniors. I'm just not, right? I like them. I think they're cute. I can play taula, but I don't know how to do talks. Like, I just wouldn't be me, right? So I wouldn't be like, I've got the seniors, right? If they were asking, it just wouldn't be me. It'd be like, I don't even know anymore what would be me. But I'm just saying is, we each have those. And then I would add to that, just remember that usually, I don't know how things are now, usually we don't choose our service. So I would distinguish between whether you were asked, which one do you want? Then sure, you were asked, therefore by all means answer, right? There's nothing wrong with that. They said, what do you feel comfortable with? And you answered. It's different from when whatever the organization is, like of the system of Sunday school says, you will serve this. then no. If you're creating a new one, then just go to the people in charge and saying, hey, I wanted to consider doing 1, 2, 3. How can I go about it? So get advice, follow the system. Those are the two places where the humility will protect you, right? Where regardless of what you think of the system, it doesn't matter. It protects us from just being self-willed all the time. And then find a way to use your gifts no matter where you get assigned. So if you don't get your way, still use your gifts and you'll find yourself finding the joy in it still, I think.
Thank you for that. How can I approach a service partner who is less helpful than I expected without being judgmental and while showing humility?
By having no expectations, right? You're not responsible for other servants' honesty. If you're delegated that, then by all means. Instead, imagine if you were at work and somebody was laid off, right? You would have to figure out what is asked of you and find out, can I do that, yes or no? It's not, can I do that relative to whether so-and-so does. It's, can I do that, yes or no, period. It's not relative to others. So if you have the capacity, great. If you don't, then by all means go, again, back to the system and say, we need more servants, right? Why? You have this many servants. These things are not getting done. Not because that one's not even a real servant, right? And this person, blah, 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 or just being like, it seems to be that in spite of the number, that there isn't enough outreach, or it seems to me that in spite of it, we don't have enough people giving lessons, right? And make, like, where it's like there's an objective fact not attached to a person, right? But not to, because once you start assessing the other person, of course you're going to get worked up and you're going to be judging, right? And you have no idea who thinks the same of you, right? Like, you've just made it relative to that person. Another person can be like, well, you suck. So it's not about who's good or bad. It's what am I supposed to do? Am I able to do it? What's in my hands? And if you can't, no problem. That's its own issue. But your can't has nothing to do with person Y. It has only to do with your ability of what you can handle and not handle. And no problem about that. Just don't judge while you're doing it.
Okay, thank you, Abuna. Next question. What are the practical ways that we can befriend our kids at Sunday school? I guess it's due to the age gap and current generation versus...
Be authentic. Be authentic. I think authenticity, like, crosses all cultural age boundaries, right? Like, I don't know all the Egyptian humor. I was serving in a church that, like, was all Arabic in the Midwest, and I had a blast. And I was so petrified when I went, because I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna fit in, right? And so I'm just like, I was like, whatever, this is what I know. I made my crappy Arabic funny. Like, I'm just like, go ahead, laugh. I'm like, this must be what it feels like for a newcomer. Like, it actually even made me relate, right? So I had the time of my life. Like, I was actually sad to leave. Like, and they had a good time. Like, just be authentic. Right? What is the message of God, like, that I'm delivering, and how can I be Christ to these people through my own personality? And if it's a real barrier, then you might need to request more servants that match more, but it doesn't mean you need to go. It doesn't necessarily mean that at all. And that's, again, I keep on emphasizing outreach. Get to know them. Get to know them, and those barriers will become less, regardless of what you think is the obstacle.
Okay, thank you, Abuna. I sometimes struggle to connect with my father of confession and don't want to be burdensome on him. What can we do to build a better relationship?
It depends. Because I hate talking about this because I'm aware that there's such a need for guidance, and it's really hard to access. So I'm saying things that I know that are in theory to be true that are not always practically available. So I'm prefacing saying I know that. So I'm speaking ideally versus what's accessible, because I don't know the situation here. So I'm not taking any jab in any way. One is to say, all right, is my father confession the one who I'm also getting guidance from, yes or no? Because if yes, then you don't need to worry about being a burden. Just say, this is what I'm looking for, can I? Because you're not looking for something bad. You're looking for what you should be getting, like that's not wrong. So the person says, no, my capacity is X, then no problem. Then it becomes, given that this person only has capacity X, what can I do? Am I going to get mentorship in the service from somebody who I just trust in the service? Am I going to outsource just this one thing? Maybe there's one person I can always just talk to about this. Is to get creative with that, because what you're seeking is a good thing, right? So the solution is not to just not do it. It's to fight for it until you can find it, and it's messy. Like I'm learning that, and I've been way more at fault than I'd like to admit. But don't be afraid to ask for it, because that's the only way you're going to arrive at it. I was saying what I'm trying to get is this. Go in prepared. Like, I have these questions about this. If they say this is not the place for it, then say, then where is? Because this is for growth. This is for insert whatever it is. And if it turns out that you just really like this person, but they're not a good match for you with their, where they are in life and where you are in life, with no judgment, but just saying that this isn't working, no problem, right? Like in that booklet about confession, like if I were to be like, oh, I'm gonna disciple myself to so-and-so because like everyone, like this is the guru of this, and their availability is 20 minutes every 6 months, am I a disciple just a name? Right? Like then go to the non-celebrity, right? And go to the person where you can actually get access.
So we have time for one more question. Anybody has any questions, we're happy to take them from the floor. Yeah. Thanks.
So, what I wanted to ask was because I remember the story with Ember Owais that when he said if you don't have food with you that's fasting, then you can eat the non-fasting food, but it was, if you go to someone's house and then they don't have fasting food, you can eat it, but you don't overindulge it. So I was just wondering, what if you had food before the fast started, and you can't? Should you eat it, or do you just get rid of it?
Question. I'm gonna give the universal. It depends. And that's where I get guidance. For example, let's say you love food so much that you made sure there was leftovers, right? Like where that was not an accident, right? Then in that person's case where there's a strong sense of gluttony, it might be like, no, you're gonna throw it out, and that was wrong. So if they're like, oh, but what a waste. I'm like, yes, you created it. Like it's not because I created it, you did, right? In another person's case, people are actually feel like it just happened, right? And they feel very, very, very strongly about not wasting, which is a beautiful thing that they care about that. In some cases, yes, it could be appropriate to say, you know what, finish it off, but again, don't overindulge. Like there's different ways depending on what the person is struggling with. Both answers could be conceivable, I guess, to it. Good question, Matthew. Guys.
Okay, thank you. Just again want to thank Abuna, Antony, and Paul for joining us today. So, thank you. So before we have our prayer, if we want to, I know there was a request for some time for reflection, some silence. So if you want to reflect over the next couple minutes on what we learned today over the last 3 talks and the Q&A, take that time, and then we'll start with a song, and then we'll go into prayer.
Father, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for gathering us here in your presence and allowing us to be able to hear your word through the lips of our beloved Father, Bona Antony. Lord, we ask you to guide us in our service, remind us that we can be transformed by it, and allow us to be able to share you and your love with all those whom we are blessed to serve. Help us to be you in all aspects in our lives in each day. Help us to remember this is a gift that you have granted us. Help us to be faithful stewards of our calling. And please continue to guide us and grant us your peace and wisdom as we seek your will in our lives. Through the intercessions of our Holy Mother, the pride of the human race, the ever Theotokos, Saint Mary, through the prayers of our beloved Father, Saint Athanasius the Apostolic, and through the prayers of our beloved Father, the Shepherd, his grace, Ambamina, and our beloved Fathers, the Hegumens and priests, and our beloved Father, Bona Antony, please hear us as we pray thankfully to our Father who art in heaven. Hallowed be thy name.
Please be seated. We'll take a picture before we go. So just to let you guys know, there will be a few things, just one email maybe sent to you with a link on feedback. Please do take the time to fill it out. And we look forward to seeing you in October. That's when our next rise will be, one in October and one usually in March. So do give us feedback as soon as you can so we can prep and start working for the next rise spiritual day or retreat, who knows. Also, Abuna has to rush to the airport, so please let him go, okay? Just let him go, okay? So he can come back again, okay? So we're just going to take a picture. Abuna, tfaddal. There's someone who left a key for a Mercedes-Benz. No, just kidding. It's a key for a car. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, you guys. In a quick minute, could the ones on the sides, I guess, stand and fill the rows between the sides and the middle, if that makes sense?
Okay, ready for the picture and a video too. 1, 2, 3. Amen.
Yes, sir. I can take one of the flash.
The love of God the Father, the grace of the God and Son, the communion gift of the Holy Spirit with you all. Go in peace. The peace of the Lord be with you all.